Phylogenetic tree. A phylogenetic tree is also known as an evolutionary tree. This tree represents the evolutionary relationship between a set of organisms or a group of organisms, which is known as taxa, singular taxon. The tree tip represents descendant group of taxa that are called species, and the nodes present on a tree represent the common ancestors. 2. Descendant which split from the same node are called sister groups. 1 and 2 are sisters. Common ancestor of 1 and 2. Figure, showing exam. Phylogenetic trees are of two types. Rooted phylogenetic tree. Rooted phylogenetic tree has a basal node which is called a root. Root represents the common ancestor of all the groups of the tree. The basal node is the oldest point of evolution. In the given illustration, a species is considered as the ancestor of all species. It is easy to find out the old and new species in a rooted tree. Unrooted phylogenetic tree. This lacks a common basal node or root. The origin of all species of a particular group is not indicated. C D G A B A C, laughing face. C. Rooted unrooted tree. Tree. Bifurcating tree. Rooted and unrooted trees can be bifurcating or multiplicating, either labeled or unlabeled. A rooted labeled tree has exactly two descendants, which arise from the interior node, and an unrooted bifurcating tree takes the form of an unrooted, free tree with three neighbors at each internal node. Some more important terms. Molecular clock. Rates of molecular evolution and amounts of genetic variation can be measured. It can be estimated fourth nucleotide sequence of a region of DNA in two or more species. The clock is a technique in molecular evolution to relate the time that the two species diverge to the number of molecular differences measured between the species' DNA sequences or proteins. It is called a gene clock or evolutionary clock. The molecular clock is based on the hypothesis that DNA and protein sequences among different organisms evolve at a rate that is relatively constant over time. Dendrogram. A dendrogram is a branching diagram that represents the relationship of similarity among a group of entities. It is a tree diagram that shows taxonomic relationships, whereas the phylogenetic tree involves the true history of evolution. The unrooted tree states only the relationship between organisms without showing common ancestors. Each branch is called a clade. The terminal end of each clade is called a leaf. Clades that have only one leaf are called simplicifolious, and two-leaved clades are called bifolious, and so on. Cladogram. It is a diagram used in cladistics to show relations among organisms. Dendrograms are often used in computational biology to illustrate the clustering of genes. Cladogram is not an evolutionary tree. Cladogram does not correlate ancestors with descendants. A single cladogram can give orangutan, the great apes, gorilla. Humans are closely related to chimpanzees and bonobos. Gorillas are our next close relatives and orangutan. Bonobo. Chimpanzee. Figure 11:18, a cladogram showing the separation of all the great apes. Rise to many evolutionary trees and can be read in many possible ways to construct a phylogenetic tree. Molecular biomarkers like RNA, DNA, and other genetic materials, as well as morphological markers like the skull and notochord, are used as parameters to construct a cladogram. A cladogram is a diagrammatic representation which shows the relationship of the closely related organisms. It is a type of phylogenetic tree, but it only shows the relationship between clades with a common ancestor. For example, a cladogram shows humans are more closely related to chimpanzees than gorillas, but it does not show the evolutionary time and the exact distance from the common ancestor. It is a tree-like diagram, which is drawn using lines. The nodes of a cladogram represent the splitting of two groups from a common ancestor. Clades are built using molecular differences instead of morphological characteristics. However, cladograms can be constructed using the correct morphological and behavioral data as well. A phylogenetic tree is a diagram which shows the relationship between organisms based on their characteristics, genetic background, and evolutionary relationships. If we diagram and phylogenetic tree, then phylogenetic tree has more value when discussing the relationships of organisms in a meaningful way with respect to their ancestor and evolution. Phylogenetic tree is drawn like a branching tree diagram in which branch length is proportional to the evolutionary distance, unlike a cladogram. Biologists and researchers analyze different characteristics of organisms using different analytical tools, such as parsimony, distance, likelihood, and Bayesian methods, etc. They consider many characteristics of organisms, including morphological, anatomical, biochemical, behavioral, molecular, and fossil characteristics, to construct phylogenetic trees. Phylogenetic tree of life. Bacteria, Archaea, Eukarya. Green. Non-sulfur Animalia, gram bacteria, fungi. Purple positives, methanomicrobials, plantae. Bacteria, methanobacterials, extreme. Methanopopals, halophilus, ciliates. Borus, CTNS, thermococcals. Y. Thermoproteus, flagellates, pyrodictium. Bacteroids. Microsporidia. Thermodoga N. Clade is the relationship between descendants and clade is a group of organisms that includes all tilde ancestors. The branching pattern of a tree is ancestors are all generations of that ancestor. Called as topology. Here, two descendants who polygamy split from the same node are Navina's sister. Group. Here, species A and B are sister groups. If we don't have sufficient data on R how to figure they are each other's closest relata. Phase. More. Out THLE related lineage, the condition is known accurate representative. On of the relate. Ion P is polygamy. Between A, B, C, D, and E is shown here, there. Advantages of classification. In the Linnaean system, phylogenetics has many advantages. Classification tells important characteristics of organisms and also tells about the organism's evolutionary history. Also, phylogenetic classification does not give a rank to an organism. But Linnaean classification gives a rank to a group of organisms. Rank gives artificially into kingdom, phyla, orders, etc. This can be misleading too. Uses of phylogenetic trees. Biologists are using phylogenetic trees in many ways to solve scientific and practical problems. Using trees for fossils. The whale's ankle. Scientists think that whales' ancestors were extinct carnivores called mesonid. But recent findings say that whales are actually more closely related to hoofed mammals like hippos and some ruminants like cows and giraffes. The closely related whales' ancestors had a type of ankle called as double fully ankle. Production of a new drug. According to scientists, a chemical compound called Taxol was discovered, which helps treat various kinds of cancer, but it was expensive and difficult to procure. In the evolutionary relationship among new species, scientists expected that close relatives of another species might produce a compound which is similar to Taxol and helps in treating cancer. So, they discovered leaves of a European tree which contain a related component that can be efficiently used to produce Taxol. Now Taxol is widely available for cancer treatment. Phylogenetics is the study of evolutionary history and relationships among individuals in an organism's group. Advantages of phylogenetic classification. There are many advantages of phylogenetic classification. This classification tells us about the organism and its evolutionary history. It doesn't attempt to rank organisms. Like Linnaean classification, there are groups of organisms artificially divided into kingdom, phyla, order and so on. For example, cats and orchids are both in the family group level in Linnaean classification, but these groups are not comparable. They show many differences such as one has a longer history than another. First, represent the family of cats Felidae, which lived about 30 million years ago, and another orchid which may have lived more than 100 million years ago. They both have different levels of diversity. There are 35 cats and 20,000 orchid species. They also have different degrees of biological differentiation, where orchids belonging to different genera can be hybridized, but the same is not true for cats. Cats Felis and lions Panthera cannot be hybridized. Reconstruction of trees, cladistics. Cladistics is a method of reconstruction of evolutionary trees. A cladistics analysis is based on data on the characters and traits of the organism about which we study. These characters may contain anatomical and physiological characteristics, behavior, or genetic sequences. There are basically three assumptions about cladistics. A change in characteristics occurs in a lineage over time. Any group of an organism is related by descent from a common ancestor. There is a branching pattern of lineage splitting. Concept of brain and mechanism. The history of the human brain shows primarily a gradual increase in brain size relative to body size during the evolutionary path from early primates to hominids and finally to Homo sapiens. One of the prominent ways of tracking the evolution of the human brain is through direct evidence in the form of fossils. The increase in size and complexity of our brains opened the way to a spectacular development of cognitive and mental skills. The expansion during evolution facilitated the addition of microcircuits with a similar basic structure, which increased the complexity of the human brain and contributed to its uniqueness. Increase fitness, they are likely to become more common over time. If they decrease fitness, they are likely to become less common. How behavior evolves. It's easy to see how many common types of behavior evolve. That's because they increase. Australopithecus afarensis. NP. Homo erectus. Brain larger. DE. Homo sapiens. Jaw and teeth smaller. Evolution of different behaviors. Behavioral evolution may involve changes in sensory systems, in the brain or even anatomical changes in the structures used to carry out a behavior. This complexity often requires significant efforts just to describe behavioral differences between species, let alone to map them genetically. There can be some proximate and some ultimate causation of different behavior. Proximate causation can be 1. Genetic basis. 2. Physiological basis. 3. Developmental basis. Ultimate causation can be 1. Evolutionary basis. 2. Phylogenetic basis. To the extent that behaviors are controlled by genes, they may evolve through natural selection. Natural selection plays a key role. If behavior is the fitness of the animal performing them. For example, when wolves hunt together in a pack, they are more likely to catch a prey. Therefore, hunting with others increases a wolf's fitness. The wolf is more likely to survive and pass its genes to the next generation by behaving this way. On the other hand, the evolution of certain other types of behaviors is not as easy to explain. An example is a squirrel chattering loudly to warn other squirrels that a predator is near. This is likely to help the other squirrels avoid the predator. Therefore, it could increase their fitness. But what about the squirrel raising the alarm? This squirrel is more likely to be noticed by the predator. Therefore, the behavior may actually lower this squirrel's fitness. How could such a behavior evolve through natural selection? One answer is that helping others often means helping close relatives. Close relatives share many of the same genes that they inherited from their common ancestors. As a result, helping a close relative may increase the chances that copies of one's own genes will be passed to the next generation. In this way, behavior that puts oneself at risk could increase through natural selection. This form of natural selection is called kin selection. Some well-studied behaviors observed with the help of evolution are altruism. The term was coined by French philosopher. A biological organism means an individual performing an action that is a cost to themselves but benefits Auguste Comte, either directly or indirectly, other individuals of the group. Altruism selection. Thus, natural selection. Altruism in natural selection is just the opposite of natural, the fittest. Organism survives, but in altruism, the fittest. Organism surrenders itself to a predator and sacrifices its life for the less fitted individual. Is contradictory to altruism. Altruism is when a behavior reduces the fitness of an individual but increases the fitness of another group or another individual. It is different from spiteful. Behavior that reduces the fitness of both the actor and recipient is known as spiteful. A behavior that increases the fitness of both recipient and actor is known as mutually beneficial behavior. Behavior A. However, William D. Hamilton's kin selection theory provides a relation between natural selection and altruism. Relatedness benefits are always more than cost, are sometimes equal but never less. Examples of altruism. Adelie penguins. These have shown selfish actions in their natural habitat. Sometimes, one of the individuals is pushed onto the cold water of the Antarctic while the others observe if the chosen one is safe or not. If there is no danger, then other penguins jump off the cliff into the water. Velvet monkey. Faced with any danger, a few monkeys tackle the danger and warn others. The alarm call raised by a monkey X might lead to the offspring running away to safety while the monkey that raises the alarm dies. X monkey is either male or female and all remaining monkeys are subdominant. E-mating is only performed by X monkey. Once monkey X sacrifices him/herself, the subdominant monkeys struggle to become the next dominant monkey. Reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal altruism, according to Trivers, is altruism that occurs between unrelated individuals when there will be repayment, or at least the promise of repayment, of the altruistic act in the future. A favor from you _I. I notice the favor L. I feel happiness. I feel obligated to do you a favor. Or, I like you and want to do you a favor. I don't feel obligated to do you a favor. Or, I don't want to do you a favor. I reciprocation. Favor in return. No reciprocation. No favor in return. 3. You notice, cheating, lack of full reciprocation. L. You like me. You don't like me. L. I positive reinforcement. You are likely to do me favors in the future. You are unlikely to do me favors in the future. Hamilton's rule. The central theorem of inclusive fitness kin selection theory and predicts that social behavior evolves under specific combinations of relatedness, benefit and cost. This review has evidence for Hamilton's rule by presenting novel syntheses of results from 2 kinds of study in diverse taxa, including cooperatively breeding birds and mammals, and use social insects. These are, first, studies that empirically parametrize Hamilton's rule in natural populations and, second, comparative phylogenetic analyses of the genetic, life history and ecological correlates of sociality. Studies parametrizing Hamilton's rule are not rare and demonstrate quantitatively that altruism, net loss of direct fitness, occurs even when sociality is facultative, in most cases. Altruism is under positive selection via indirect fitness benefits that exceed direct fitness costs, and social behavior commonly generates indirect benefits by enhancing the productivity or survivorship of kin. Comparative analyses show that cooperative breeding and eusociality are promoted by high relatedness and monogamy and, potentially, by life history factors facilitating family structure and high benefits of helping, and ecological factors generating low costs of social behavior. Overall, the focal studies strongly confirm the predictions of Hamilton's rule regarding conditions for social evolution and their causes. Inclusive fitness applying only to relatives is called kin selection. Hamilton's rule RxB greater than C specifies the conditions under which reproductive altruism evolves. R equals relationship between donor and acceptor. B equals benefit received by the receiver. C equals cost incurred by the donor. Kin selection. Charles Darwin was the first to discuss the concept of kin selection. This was termed by Maynard Smith in 1964. Kin selection is a type of natural selection that considers the role of relatives when the genetic fitness of a given individual is evaluated. It is based upon the concept of inclusive fitness, which is acquired by organisms themselves during their lifespan. Kin selection occurs when an animal engages in self-sacrificial behavior that benefits the genetic fitness of its relatives. 4 types of social action are based upon the fitness of the recipient and actor. Altruistic behavior reduces the productive fitness of an actor and increases the reproductive fitness of the recipient. According to Darwin's theory of natural selection, selfish and competitive strategies are favored over probationary time, and there is no scope for altruistic behavior. According to Hamilton, altruism evolved along with natural selection, although it seems that both are contradictory in nature in the first instance. However, both are related. When the actor and recipient have the same genes at one or more loci, then the actor can increase the copies of their genes through the recipient reproduction, i.e., another actor is used for inducive fitness rather than individual fitness. Belding's ground squirrels give alarm calls when an actor spots a predator and attracts the predator towards itself while alarming the others and allowing them time to hide. Imprinting. It is a form of learning in which a very young animal fixes its attention on the first object with which it has a visual, auditory, or tactile experience and thereafter follows that object. Majorly, imprinting is of 3 types. Filial imprinting. Filial imprinting is a process readily observed in precocial birds whereby a social attachment is established between a young animal and an object that is typically, although not necessarily, apparent. Examples: chicks of domestic chickens prefer to be near large groups of objects that they have imprinted on. This behavior was used to determine that very young chicks, a few days old, have rudimentary counting skills. series of experiments, they were made to imprint on plastic balls and could figure out which of the two groups of balls hidden behind screens had the most balls. American coot mothers have the ability to recognize their chicks by imprinting on cues from the first chick that hatches. This allows mothers to distinguish their chicks from parasitic chicks. Peregrine falcon has also been known to imprint on specific structures for their breeding grounds, such as cliffsides and bridges, and thus will favor that location for breeding. Figure 11.22 Imprinting behavior by duckling, baby duck following duck mother. Figure 11.22 Imprinting behavior by duckling, baby duck following duck mother. Sexual imprinting. Sexual imprinting is the process by which a young animal learns the characteristics of a desirable mate. For example, male zebra. Fish appear to prefer mates with the appearance of the female bird that rears them rather than that of the birth parent when they are different. Sexual attraction to humans can develop in non-human mammals or birds as a result of sexual imprinting when reared from young by humans. One example is the London Zoo female giant panda Chi-Chi, when taken to Moscow Zoo for mating with the male giant panda N. She refused his attempts to mate with her, but made a full sexual self-presentation to a zookeeper. It commonly occurs in falconry birds reared from hatching by humans. Such birds are called imprints in falconry. When an imprint must be bred from, the breeder lets the male bird copulate with their head while they are wearing a special hat with pockets on it to catch the male bird's semen. The breeder courts a suitable imprint female bird, including offering food if it is part of that species' normal courtship. During copulation, the breeder puts the flat of one hand on the female bird's back to represent the weight of a male bird, and with the other hand uses a pipette or a hypodermic syringe without a needle to squirt the semen into the female's cloaca. Sexual imprinting on inanimate objects is a popular theory concerning the development of sexual fetishism. For example, according to this theory, imprinting on shoes or boots, as with Konrad Lorenz's geese, would be the cause of shoe fetishism. Limbic system suggests that prenatal, perinatal and postnatal experiences leave imprints upon the limbic system, causing lifelong effects, and this process is identified as limbic imprinting. The term is described as a human emotional map, deep-seated beliefs, and values that are stored in the brain's limbic system and govern people's lives at the subconscious level. It is one of the suggested explanations for the claim that the experiences of an infant, particularly during the first 2 years of his life, contribute to his lifelong psychological development. Imprinted genes can have astounding effects on body size, brain size, and the manner in which the brain organizes its processes. Evolutionary trends within the animal kingdom have shown a substantive increase in the forebrain, particularly towards the limbic system. This evolution has even been thought of to have a mutative effect on brain size, trickling down the human ancestry.